Welcome everyone to our partner webinar series. Today's session is eSignatures and remote business, going beyond your initial use case. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. If you haven't had a chance to view our first session, you can find it on our YouTube channel. I'd like to take a second to thank the wonderful people at OneSpan. It's because of their support that we are able to bring you additional programming and services. A few housekeeping items. If you have a question for our experts today, please make sure to put this question into the Q&A box. Last, we will be sending out the slides and a link to view the session, so keep an eye on your email box. Today's speakers are Samir Hajern and Aaron Davis. I won't take any more of our time, so let's take it away, Samir and Aaron.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And welcome, everyone. It's great to be here with everybody today. Again, I'm Aaron Davis, the Director of Product Marketing for OneSpan, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Samir Hajern, and he leads up our global eSignature practice. We're really super excited to join you and share some insights into a topic that's very timely in today's business landscape: how to drive that value and enable some of those secure remote customer experiences through eSignature. And as mentioned, this is a part of a series. If you haven't attended the first sessions, completely fine. We'll jump right in, but we do encourage you to check out those sessions as well as they are recorded. So today we're going to talk about the benefits of scaling the adoption of eSignature inside your organization. We talk to customers regularly, and we get questions about how to go beyond sort of the initial set of use cases and implementation and really expand the implementation of eSignature, really leveraging that technology broadly across their business. And there are a lot of questions around that. And in many of these scenarios, customers are realizing the value quickly, and they're turning to us to ask, okay, well, we've had some initial success within this certain business unit or scenario. How do we scale that? So we're going to talk a lot about how to scale that today. And some of the best practices around scaling that as well. And we're going to walk through a proven 6-step process that we've seen work successfully with our customers in not only how to expand usage and adoption, but also how to start thinking about building more of an enterprise stack and a center of excellence around eSignature, and certainly some adjacent technologies as well that will empower end-to-end digital workflows across B2C, B2B, and B2E channels of your business. And once we get through all that, we'll have time at the end of the session today. We'd love to open the floor for Q&A, and we encourage you to ask away on anything in today's session. We're certainly here to help you there. And with that, let's get started with the content today. So I thought a good starting point would be to take a step back and let's have a look at the past year. You know, as we're all aware, COVID has disrupted almost every facet of our personal and professional lives, and not always in a good way. On the other hand, the pandemic has made a profound impact on what business looks like and how business will be conducted, certainly in years to come and beyond. And we're seeing this already happen today in industries like banking and financial services, insurance, healthcare, public sector, and government. All of these areas looking to offer digital services that really keep pace with changing customer habits and preferences. In today's anywhere economy, you know, we know that consumers want and they expect convenient at-home experiences. And I think it's safe to say that the post-pandemic consumer now expects these natively digital experiences are seamless, and they integrate very seamlessly within their day-to-day lives. And as a business, you're not always going to have the opportunity to be face-to-face with customers, which poses a number of challenges around verifying customer identities, for example, and providing a high-touch experience as well. So as we come out of the pandemic, consumers will continue to, use digital, and I think we can all agree that they're going to increasingly turn to human help for more complex transactions, even if those transactions start in a remote environment or a digital environment. So all of this is forcing businesses to transform at a faster rate and at a scale like we've never seen before, and eSignatures play a significant role here. You may have already launched eSignature inside a part of your organization, and perhaps are being tasked with leading the digital charge, finding ways to scale that solution across other business units within your organization. The big question is, how do you do that? And how do you drive that change successfully in order to leverage the power of some of these solutions within your business? So many of our customers start in one or two use cases for eSignature, and really that largely depends on where the need arises and typically where there's a big challenge within the organization. Often we see businesses start on the right-hand side of the slide. So they start with consumer-facing use cases, and these are use cases where the agreement processes are external to their organization. But we've also seen businesses start with internal signing use cases more to the left, as well as business-to-business use cases in the middle. But regardless of where you start, once you've implemented eSignature and started to see some of the success of these solutions, the next big question is, okay, how do I take that initial win and scale the use of eSignature in a more systematic way? Because we could be, typically when we look at this kind of landscape, there are dozens of use cases that are available in the organization, and there's dozens, likewise, there's dozens of opportunities to be more efficient as well. So what I'd like to do for the next couple of minutes is just walk through a 6-step methodology that we've been using to tackle eSignature expansion efforts in a more formal, repeatable fashion. This has really worked very well for our customers, both big and small, and across a variety and diversity of industries as well. So let's have a quick look at how we do that. So typically we'll look at things like assessing and selecting the easy and high impact use cases in your organization. How do we approach different lines of business, and what are the different approaches there? Collecting requirements. What are the requirements? What are the requirements at a high level? How do we make sure that we're meeting the needs of our internal stakeholders? When we have all this data collected, we're going to build those use case specific demos, and we're going to get to the critical, that will allow us to get critical buy-in from a wide range of stakeholders across the organization. Then from there, building a deployment plan, launching the eSignature project, and finally, and most importantly, how do we promote it? How do we communicate the launch of this initiative across the business, and really set you up for success in the future expansion efforts? So to start, what we typically do, and what you typically do, is map out all of the different use cases for eSignature in your organization. So it might look like a little bit like the chart, or it might be organized a little bit like the slide I showed a couple slides ago with some of the use cases. And typically you'd work through and work with the different groups in your organization really to map this out and really understand the lay of the land, what's out there within your organization. The more difficult part is determining which ones you should tackle first. So we recommend tackling some of the easiest use cases, some of those areas that will be the fastest to implement. You're looking for quick wins in a lot of these areas, and also have the largest return on investment. So you can demonstrate back to the business the ROI of that project, and and scale that from there. Now, this isn't an exact science, but it's more of a method that you can typically, eyeball with the help of a few impartial colleagues as part of the use case assessment exercise. And really the key here is to try to get a diversity of stakeholders from the business to feed into the requirements in the initial exercise. And then that'll allow you to build a pipeline and a plan for future use cases once you get past those initial set of use cases that you've targeted or you've identified. So let's take an opportunity to walk through one example here. We work with a lot of banks and financial institutions here at OneSpan, and a use case that falls into that that upper right-hand quadrant from my last slide there is wealth management. So why wealth management? Why is that the case? Well, first, the return on investment is pretty high. These are always consumer-facing transactions or linked to customer acquisition efforts. So it could be new customer acquisition, but it could also be tied to customer growth, customer retention, and any of those initiatives as well. And really another ROI benefit is taking some of the cost out of servicing these servicing customers, servicing clients, driving some of those inefficiencies in the process. So in summary, faster and more efficient customer acquisition. And number two, implementation speed is going to be high as well. Wealth management is often human to human. There's a premium put on that human to human, face-to-face interaction. And this is what we call user initiated. And these types of processes don't require integration into a core system or a core application. Wealth managers and advisors can typically log into a solution like OneSpan Sign and beginning using it pretty instantaneously with the out-of-the-box technology. Now, there are a number of considerations to take into account, which we're going to explore. All right, so now that you have your priority use cases identified, we can move on to step two, and that's really around approaching new business groups. Start approaching the first set of business units, lines of business, and really trying to understand their current processes and how eSignatures might benefit them. You'll definitely want to understand why they haven't adopted eSignature yet, and that could be for a number of reasons, right? That's always a good starting point. This might be tied to their comfort level or resistance in adopting a new technology, for example, but there may be other reasons why as well. And we encourage you to dig in and to really understand why. Regardless of what that barrier or the challenge is, we always recommend sending a sample eSignature transaction to the relevant stakeholder, just to ensure they know how simple and easy it is to use and to familiarize themselves with the solution. And you'll also want to share some success stories. These could be your initial implementation of eSignature, for example. It could also be success stories from your peers in the industry that have worked with the solution and have digitized in this manner. And if you're working with an eSignature partner like OneSpan, we'd certainly be happy to provide you with some of those success stories from our customer base to help you internally evangelize eSignature within your organization. And make sure your stakeholders walk you through their current process so you can document and capture issues they're facing. What does it look like today? It could be something completely paper-based end-to-end, could be a mix of digital and paper-based processes. Whatever the process or however the approach is laid out, it's really important to capture and document the process end to end. So really you have that clarity into the issues that they're facing. And last but not least, try to get a sense for any additional barriers to the adoption of eSignature. You're certainly going to need this data in order to propose workarounds or options to help stakeholders move past those barriers if and when your initiative gets approved. Next, you'll want to dive a little bit deeper to collect the specific requirements for each one of those use cases. So what we typically ask would be questions like, how will the process be initiated, the eSignature process be initiated? Is this a remote process or is this an in-person process? How are the signers themselves going to be authenticated? Are all signatures required or are some of the signatures optional on these documents? Do certain documents need to be visible to stakeholders in a transaction and hidden to others for a number of different compliance reasons? So there are tons of questions you should be diving into and really understanding and building a requirements checklist, a qualification checklist from this. As a side note, if you need help with this as well, we have a fantastic eSignature RFP and readiness checklist. And this has helped customers document and capture all of this important information upfront in the process. So if that's something that you find would be helpful for your organization, please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you need assistance with that. So now if you've gotten to this point in the process, the good news is it's time for demo day and the opportunity to really pitch your initiative internally within your business. And this typically involves developing use case specific demos for a wide range of the individual stakeholders within your organization. So we typically recommend inviting the executive sponsor, the line of business owners and champions, but equally important is to have representation from finance, from legal, from your security team, from IT, from compliance. Because at the end of the day, this technology is producing legally binding agreements at the end of this process. That's certainly very important. And a typical demo day agenda looks a little bit like this, middle portion of this slide. Use case overview and success is something that has worked very well within our customers when they have done these type of demo days, showing that initial use case overview. What did the success look like? What were the target use cases and rationale, desired outcomes and benefits? And certainly beyond the demo, next steps, what the plan is for training constituents within your organization, how to deploy it, and et cetera. Finally, leaving some time from Q&A at the end of the session. And again, if you need any help with building these demos and you're already a client of OneSpan, again, don't hesitate to reach out. We're certainly here to help, not only to develop, but also deliver these demos when the time comes. We're happy to partner with you on this if you need support, really in order to make the most of the demo day with your team. So moving on to step 5, and this is really all about building a deployment plan. And this is typically where you get a project manager involved, or again, if you're a customer of OneSpan, our team can help you build this out for you. And this will ensure you keep the project on track, ensure some of the key deliverables and milestones are transparent to everyone involved. And really this step is all about accountability, ensuring everyone knows their role in the implementation and the successful deployment of eSignatures across your organization. And the beauty of this methodology that we've developed is to really allow you to replicate this process from one deployment to the next, so that you can ultimately rinse and repeat for any future expansion efforts around eSignature within your organization. So it's flexible, it's agile, and it's a repeatable process that's scalable across your business. So with all that effort that you're investing and putting into the process up until this point, it's really important not to forget to evangelize what you've built, to gain that traction and momentum across the enterprise. And what we've seen is that customers who have done this level of internal marketing ultimately get better adoption. So for example, eSignatures can be adopted more quickly. They'll take off within your organization more quickly internally, and you're really able to drive the right behaviors with your customers, who of course can increasingly expect the ability to interact digitally and remotely. So we recommend sending pre-launch communications to key business leaders, really giving them a heads up, taking advantage of the opportunity to explain what's changing and what's driving that change and some of the benefits of that change within the organization. And once you've gone live with an eSignature solution, we always recommend celebrating internally. That can include organizing a lunch event, sending in communication to the organization, sending out some sort of, we've seen customers do great things with video, inviting staff to a lunch and learn to walk them through the use case and the process. And again, some of the benefits to your organization and customers. So, we've seen a lot of customers have a lot of fun with this internally evangelizing it, and they've had a good impact from that. And lastly, don't forget about ongoing updates that are required. For example, publishing weekly usage reports to some of your key business stakeholders to keep them abreast of adoption, for example. Ensuring tutorials and documentation are available to your internal eSignature users. Offering up professional development training for employees who express interest in learning more and taking a more active role in the solution. So all these things collectively really help build that momentum inside your organization. And typically what we find is that those customers that do this extremely well often see a higher level of success when they go to roll out eSignature within adjacent business units across their organization. So that's the 6-step methodology that we recommend using. And again, if you need help with any one of these steps, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Before I pass the mic to my colleague Samir, I just wanted to point out really 2 areas of consideration that have come up more frequently from our customer base since the pandemic. And the first is really all about best practices in verifying identities remotely. So we're all seeing limited or at least fewer interactions in person throughout the course of COVID-19, with our employees, our partners, our customers as well. And, the question we always get is whether it's necessary to authenticate the signer before they access or sign a document. And the answer really is it depends. But what I can say is that the pandemic has really forced businesses to consider and sometimes reconsider implementing higher levels of identity assurance, especially when you think about B2C consumer-facing transactions, whether it's customer onboarding in banking or finance, wealth management, insurance, auto finance, consumer finance, lending, the list goes on. And what you see on the right-hand side, isn't really new for eSignature. Many businesses were already engaging remotely with customers, but really with the increased use of online and some of the mobile channels that are being used today, the increase of identity fraud and theft throughout the pandemic, we've all seen those statistics. We really recommend adding some level of signer authentication to your external or remote eSignature process to kind of up level on the high assurance part of the process. Now, if you're familiar with OneSpan Sign, you know that we offer a range of identity verification and authentication options, both natively and through third-party identity providers. So we'll focus on the left-hand column here, which is the most common form of external signer identification. And we've seen many customers use SMS and your typical question and answer methods to authenticate signers. But what we're seeing increasingly is that for higher risk or higher value agreement processes, like account opening and lending, we typically see organizations opting for a more secure and more robust identification option. So government ID verification is one of the more novel ways to do this. Involves scanning a government issued credential and ID document, and then pairing that with a biometric comparison or a biometric feature to provide a higher level identity assurance that's really tied to the eSignature transaction. And on the right, just a quick word for anyone in the audience that's doing business in other regions around the world, like Europe, or in industries like government. We do offer a digital certificate-based identification approach to verify identities at the point of signing. So essentially, when the signer is about to apply a signature to a document, they're asked to provide their identity again using a personal digital certificate. And this isn't something we see in North America, for example, a lot, but it's sometimes definitely in Europe, and it's sometimes a requirement in other regions as well. And also in some cases, some use cases like federal government. All right, one last thing to cover. Many of us are working from home, or at least not in the office as much as we used to be. So we can't forget about the importance of that human connection when it comes to interacting with our customers. And our customers, the story here is our customers still, your customers still need you, right? And in fact, as transactions get more complex, your customers tend to turn to channels where they can get human help and human assistance. So the question then is, well, how do you interact with your customers who are remote, but do it do it as human and as natural and really as personal as possible, right? We want to replicate that kind of face-to-face interaction. And this is a quote from a customer of ours that I thought was really impactful. And this customer said, as we come out of this pandemic, customers will continue to use a digital, but when the moment is there, when they need a human, we'll be able to connect them to a human being. That's our approach in terms of how we're thinking about digital and that human connection. And we hear about that a lot within our business. That need for a hybrid model, whether it's interacting digitally, seamlessly on digital channels, but also tying in the ability to see to interact face to face. We're human beings. We're never going to lose that ability or that need to communicate face to face. So that face to face communication and that human element is really what's been driving a lot of the innovation that we've been doing here at OneSpan. And this is why we launched OneSpan Sign Virtual Room. And really what we're offering here is the ability for businesses like yours who have potentially lost a way to engage with customers in person, really looking to recreate the power of the face-to-face meeting. And this is really all about helping you engage with your customers in a more interactive, rich way to ensure they get the help they need to sign documents and agreements, just as if they were sitting across the table face-to-face with you. Again, we're replicating the face-to-face experience as a part of a fully digital, mediated, and very secure workflow. So you likely have a number of these types of mediated signing processes that require a little bit of additional human assistance. These are high value transactions. It could be a little bit more complex in nature. And that's really what the solution is all about. So OneSpan Sign Virtual Room includes things like video conferencing, robust identity verification, authentication, the rich collaboration and annotation tools that you'd expect, so that you're viewing documents simultaneously with your customers, and of course the eSignature as well to complete the agreement. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton over to Samir, and Samir is going to talk about how to build an enterprise stack with eSignature integrated. Samir?
Hey, thanks, Aaron. Hi, thank you. So in this second part of today's session, what I'm going to cover, and I'll walk you through what this whole enterprise stack and what we mean by this, but broadly around, you've looked at expansion. Now, how do you keep running this business in an efficient way and make it scale even further out from what you've done so far, right? So this was kind of like the first 6 months you've gone through the expansion, and now you want to take it beyond and keep penetrating various use cases within your organization. So as we see, customers start adopting these kind of e-signature workflows, they obviously want to make sure that they have standardization, which helps drive efficiency, and then also look at approaches which are scalable for them, right? Something which is cost efficient and scalable in that model. So as a first step, I want to walk you through this concept of what we call as an enterprise stack. So next slide there, please, Al. Aaron, next slide, please. Thank you. Hi. So, when I talk to digitization leaders, and I'm seeing what's really driving them to kind of find for efficient ways. It's if you look at this workflow, there are various elements in a workflow, right? There's various channels of consumption. There's various channels of notification. There are different modalities to verify a signer who's coming in to sign something. There are different signing options coming from different devices. So if you look at all these combinations, all of these together can create a fair amount of complexity to manage. And if you have each of these being deployed in different ways across the enterprise, then it's a natural conclusion that scalability would be a question. So when I talk to these leaders, one thing which I consistently hear is that what they want to is any new line of business coming into their platform, they want to reduce the barriers to entry so that people don't need to reinvent all of this every time. At the same time, they want to make sure that there's no siloed development, which is causing higher maintenance costs and then becomes onerous on these organizations, but also provide the governance that they need to run their regulated enterprises in an efficient way. So that's what's really driving it. And if you look at this, that's the core theme of why people are even kind of having this conversation. Next slide, please, Aaron. So if you let's take a look at one of our banking customers. If you look at this, we typically start with a lot of, like Aaron was saying, in the B2C use cases with retail banking or private banking or any other lending applications, and eSignatures traditionally sit between upstream doc generation or doc prep systems and downstream some kind of a storage platform, right? So you've got a document which starts in a digital model and goes in a digital storage, and the workflow in between, which needs to be orchestrated from sender to signer, that's where we come in. And so everything there that comes in terms of notification, ID verification, all of that, that needs to be done. This as a concept itself of, where every customer has a set of approved technology that they use, in terms of there could be 5 different ways of doc generation systems, X number of storage systems, different modalities for authentication. All of this is what we call as a enterprise stack. And being able to integrate in this stack is sometimes challenging for individual lines of businesses, both from a development perspective as well as a cost perspective. And we've all kind of seen this. Integrated systems give a lot more adoption. It's a workflow which is easier for customers to kind of get through. The friction is lower, and obviously that drives adoption, which is the primary goal here. You don't want to build a system which is not really used as much. So you want to drive for high adoption. So that is one of the challenges that most of our customers are facing as they approach these kind of deployments across various lines of businesses. Next slide, please. So one thing that we've seen, being able to achieve ROI, at a faster rate is customers who have successfully, been able to implement a predefined stack with workflows embedded for doc generation, doc storage, and the ID verification that needs to happen. Any integrations that have been done as a pre-built thing reduces the complexity and time to market or time for development for individual lines of businesses, and they can really focus their efforts and energy on the business issues that they need to solve, as against trying to figure out the integration interfaces or how to kind of engage with different vendors. So this type of a stack, which is kind of pre-built by some entity within the organization, if this was available, and I'm just saying in a perfectly utopian way, that would definitely reduce ROI, because me as a new line of business can come in and say, well, it's already pre-built for our single sign-on. It's pre-built for the doc gen system. I just need to figure out what documents I need to get through, who needs to sign, what controls I need, and how do I get it going. That's suddenly I'm only working in the business realm of the project as against the technology and the integration and the API aspect of these projects. So that's what we mean by an enterprise stack. And most of our customers that I've seen who have deployed these type of enterprise stacks have had tremendous, both adoption across lines of business, because it becomes simpler for people to adopt, and obviously also have a great ROI with a very manageable cost of maintenance and manageability as such. Next slide there, please. Thank you. So, next I'm going to walk you through, so, okay, you build a stack, you identified a stack that you need, and you build one. Now, how do I go about building a center of excellence? And what really is a center of excellence? So next slide there, please, Aaron. I've got this definition that it kind of stuck in my mind, which I've seen from Gartner. And there are many multiple definitions, for this kind of a service, whether it's called a dedicated unit which supports a certain type of operations, or it's a combination of, people, processes, and technologies, or sometimes it's a centralized point of service. Like, if you've got an IT help desk, that's a centralized point of service, or it's a defined business function. If it's a say a FP&A function, or just a accounts receivable function, you could term that as a shared service which supports different lines of businesses as well. So whatever your definition is of this, it's this. We do see this apply to our deployments in the generic sense of having eSignatures to be used across a bank or across an enterprise. And that's, I just thought I'll open with this, because this is a definition which helps kind of make it simpler rather than make it sound like something which is, extremely complicated. Next slide there, please. What we like to see this on two dimensions of maturity and value to that you can get, right? As what's called as a COE. And in the most basic form, which when customers really start, using the product, and they are probably in the first, year of using our service, where they have not really got the value of the benefits that you would expect from a digital solution yet. It's in a most simplest form, it's just a volume buying agreement, and we have many customers who have done this. And one of our customers, the state of Michigan, recently did a webinar with us as well, and you can look at what they had to say about this. But what they did is they had a use case in a records and repository division at the state level, and then they said, okay, we've got a need for eSignatures. We're going to find a vendor which can support us, and then while we do this, we're going to select the vendor and then negotiate agreement on behalf of the state itself, and make it available for any other department to use this service. So it starts with a single use case, right? And then, but with the view that we're going to have many different lines of business use this, so we want to create some kind of a volume purchase agreement, and maybe even some people even are sophisticated enough to kind of put together a chargeback model where they say internal consumers or internal lines of businesses are charged back, so they don't need to really deal with the vendor or any of those things. But I see this as a quick way of getting through. You've not really looked at the people, process, and technology side of it, but you've covered a part of it, which is the vendor side of the interface. And I see a lot of customers start with this approach, which brings some amount of consistency, in terms of resources, the level of skills that they build with any particular technology, and how they could cross-functionally support different groups. And then next up, we see people incrementally add what we just spoke about, a enterprise stack. So you've done a volume purchase agreement, you've got negotiated the contract so that every group can work through that, and then you build a enterprise stack. You identify what's those common services that need to leverage across those different lines of business, and then you provide some amount of a pre-built integrations in that stack, which reduces the level of effort for individual businesses to kind of get onboarded, and that really kind of helps put together this kind of pre-built, pre-starter model for internal consumers to kind of gain value. And I usually see this, it takes a little time to kind of build these things, understand the complexities of the various integrations that that matter to those organizations. So I see this as obviously an incremental step up, both from a maturity as well as from a value realization perspective. So with a little bit of if I were to even plot a time dimension, I see people kind of start this after they've done a few use cases and say, okay, I'm going to build a stack and I'm going to kind of take this forward, such that others don't need to reinvent what I went through. And then finally, if you see the end state that we see in a full mature form is trying to put together a full center of excellence that has its own policies, its processes, and sometimes even people in place. So if a line of business wants to digitize a workflow, they can come to the center of excellence and say, hey, we've got this workflow that needs to be digitized. Can you help build this out for us? Can you provide us the business analysts to kind of cover this? Can you provide the developers to cover this? And we'll show you. We have the kind of a business side from a requirements covered, but we do need someone who's got vendor and technology and eSignature competency to kind of take this forward. And in providing this kind of a full service organization internally is something which we've seen with our more mature deployments. And we have quite a few of those. We have some large banking and insurance customers which are doing this. And when I say deployed across the enterprises, we're talking hundreds of lines of business actually in different use cases using us across those in a very global footprint, kind of doing this. We see a lot of this traditionally in the banking and insurance sector. We see this kind of model being adopted very kind of frequently, and that's nothing to do with us as a vendor or us as being a service provider in eSignature space. That's just how some of these organizations have matured in their IT deployment models to be able to harvest the full value. But so I just wanted to kind of walk through these three different stages. It doesn't mean that you have to jump up to the center of excellence always. You could start with volume buying, and I've seen people even stay at that. It doesn't even mean you have to go the whole route. Value is based on inputs that you put into your process. So, sometimes it just makes sense to, put the requisite amount of effort that you intend to kind of harness out of it. And then finally, I just want to kind of walk through just some, benefits of deploying this. Obviously, it's a great responsiveness as a competitive advantage for individual businesses. I read this article this morning. It was about Jeff Bezos, and now that he's stepping down, there was a line from one of the first advertisements that he ever put for a job in Amazon. And one of the things he said was he was looking for a programmer, and he wanted the programmer to do things in 1/3 the time that most average competent people would take. And so he was always about speed. Jeff's, his thinking was always around how can I get things faster and not have to learn through my mistakes, but learn through somebody else's. So responsiveness is obviously a key differentiator that he felt. So, and I think this some sort of a center of excellence does provide that. It also provides some governance with consistent and automated execution through rules. Like so as a if you build this pre-built stack, so you know that single sign-on is always going to work in a certain way. Document storage is going to happen in a certain way. So if there were business rules or guidelines from a technology and a regulation perspective, those are consistently going to be followed. You're not relying on individual businesses to kind of build this out in the right way. And obviously then automated workflows and all the controls that come in with that are also important elements. And in some like I said, some people do staff this, and it provides them a staffing advantage in terms of consolidating the key SMEs in a certain group so that they can be shared across different teams. Every team is not kind of struggling to bring in the right SMEs. So obviously that brings in its own benefits as well. So I just want to wrap that up with this quick slide here. And I think we can take questions beyond that.
Yeah. We have had a few questions that have come in, but we're going to start with this one. For the government ID check, are you simply taking a photo of the ID and attaching it to the eSignature transaction?
That's a good question. No, actually, what we do is when we use biometric technology to kind of click the picture of it, and then there are different algorithms which are applied over these photo IDs based on there are certain machine readable zones which have certain characteristics that are each driver's license across different geographies have different characteristics that are available. Those are in our database, and we then go through whether it's the font, it's the offsets, it's the QR code on it, or it's all of those get mapped. And based on that, there's a score which comes out which says, we believe with a relative index of confidence, we believe this license is a genuine license, or this document is a genuine document. So that's one aspect of it. And then beyond that, we also do, you can do a quick selfie of the signer themselves to make sure that that license is in the right hands on benefits as well. So I just wanted to wrap that up with this quick slide here. And I think we can, take questions beyond that.
Yeah. We have had a few questions that have come in, but we're going to start with this one. For the government ID check, are you simply taking a photo of the ID and attaching it to the eSignature transaction?
That's a good question. No, actually, what we do is when we use biometric technology to kind of click the picture of it, and then there are different algorithms which are applied over these photo IDs based on there are certain machine readable zones which have certain characteristics that are each driver's license across different geographies have different characteristics that are available. Those are in our database, and we then go through whether it's the font, it's the offsets, it's the QR code on it, or it's all of those get mapped. And based on that, there's a score which comes out which says, we believe with a relative index of confidence, we believe this license is a genuine license, or this document is a genuine document. So that's one aspect of it. And then beyond that, we also do, you can do a quick selfie of the signer themselves to make sure that that license is in the right hands with the right people, right? So you can actually click a picture, go through a biometric comparison with the picture on the driver to actually make sure that is the right license in the right person's hand.
Okay. Thank you. The next question is, the video conferencing option looks great, but how can we get access to this for testing purposes?
This is available through, if someone in the audience needs to just test out, we do have a sandbox. You can contact our customer support team, and they would be happy to connect with the right people. We can get you set up on our sandbox environment where you can test out different use cases and actually do some quick piloting to see if it makes sense for you.
Wonderful. Is the Center of Excellence only relevant for larger organizations?
That's a good question. I've seen a lot of large organizations definitely go down that path, but I wouldn't say that a center of excellence is only relevant for large, though there is some aspect of scale, which gives the right benefits. But like I said, I think a center of excellence, if you look at this, and which is why I like to show this value and maturity kind of a dimension to this graph, is that it allows people to say, you don't need to implement it all the way through. You could start small and scale up to your needs. And so I think it's relevant. How big and how much you want to invest in it is something which you need to decide based on scale of the organization. And more than scale, I think it's more about different use cases that you have, the complexity of the different lines of business.
Wonderful. One more question here about the Center for Excellence. Does the Center for Excellence charge back costs to the different lines of business?
It surely can, and I see a lot of customers do that, and that just allows for internal billings to be done right, and be able to kind of measure benefits of the Center of Excellence. But it largely depends on where this is hosted. Sometimes, if this is hosted in part of some operations team or in part of some CTO's organization, sometimes they just capitalize it and don't charge back. But I've seen a lot of banks do this in terms of chargebacks. And we do provide, just to add that, we do provide robust reporting to kind of be able to kind of track this usage at different levels, so that we can actually support our customers who want to do chargebacks.
Wonderful. Do we know of any cases where an e-signed document authorization was challenged in the courts?
I mean, I think there are all kinds of challenges always happening with documents, especially in regulated markets. People are constantly, questioning. And more than that, I've seen very common things. I didn't see this document, or I didn't actually look at the whole document. And I think that is bound to happen. What we do is we provide a detailed audit trail with the document which is signed, which captures the information on the signer, where they came in from, what, their IP address, what authentication modality, if they were sent the SMS OTP, we record that. If a signer was, using the government issued ID for verification, we capture that information as well. And carry the entire history of it. And it's a live history, which means if they come in multiple times, it tracks all of that and all the actions that they took on it. So what you can't do is, you can't control people from challenging something, but what you can do is be prepared for that challenge by having the right backup in terms of, a evidence summary, as well as using the right modalities for their authentication to make sure you're protected.
Great. Our next question asks, how do you know if e-signatures are accepted in different jurisdictions? India, for example, is very restrictive.
Yeah, so great question. And there is a lot of variations across the globe in terms of legalities and jurisdictions having their own requirements. And what we've done is we've provided a legality guide on our website. I encourage people to use that. If you go to OneSpan.com, and under the eSignatures, there's a legality guide, and it covers different jurisdictions. And we have a lot of SMEs who track things globally, and we use outside counsel on this as well. But we work quite frequently to update that document. So I would encourage people to look at that legality guide and see if the regions that you're interested are covered from eSignature. But if the question is just like, are eSignatures legal in India, then then they surely are. It's just that how you do it and what process you use might vary.
Great. In cases that require the use of seals, as happens in many legal or governmental cases, what solution do you offer?
Yeah, seals is an area where we see some use cases, obviously, like a notary seal. So we do support in-person electronic notarization. We are also looking to launch something in our remote online notarization. So if there was a notary seal which needs to be applied on a document, we do support that functionality. A notary can upload his or her a seal as part of their profile, and then when they sign and the document needs to be sealed off, then that seal can be applied to the document.
Wonderful. That was our last question with content. There is one more question about getting slides for this webinar, and we did respond in the chat. You will receive slides post-event for your email, so keep a look at your email box. But Aaron, Samir, thank you so much for being here today. Aaron, any last words? Anything from you, Samir?
None for me. I just thank the audience for attending. And if they, again, if they have any further questions or insights, always a pleasure to chat, and to please reach out to either one of us.
Wonderful. Thank you again for being here today, everybody, and have a wonderful day.